You finally slow down. You pray honestly for the first time in a long time. And then things get harder. Not lighter. Not clearer. Harder. The stress increases. The temptation gets stronger. The situation you prayed about somehow gets worse. And quietly, a question starts forming inside you. Did I do something wrong? Here's the truth most Christians don't talk about. Sometimes things get worse after you pray, because something real has started. Not everything that feels like resistance is failure. In fact, sometimes it's the first sign that your prayer actually mattered. Let's walk through this slowly. When prayer disturbs what was quiet. There's a moment in Scripture that many people read quickly and miss. In Exodus 5, when Moses first obeys God and confronts Pharaoh, things don't improve for Israel. They get worse. Pharaoh doesn't just refuse, he retaliates. He strips away the straw that was used to make bricks, but keeps the daily quota exactly the same. The people now have to gather their own materials and meet the same impossible numbers. Their workload doubles. Their backs break further, and they turn on Moses. Why have you made our situation worse? May the Lord look on you and judge you for what you've done to us. That question still lives today. You pray for change, but the system you're in pushes back. And notice something that's easy to miss. Moses didn't only face opposition from outside. He also questioned God himself. Right there in Exodus 5 verse 22, he cried out, "Why, Lord, why have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me?" Even the man chosen by God wasn't exempt from the confusion of resistance. Here's what's happening. Before prayer, you were aligned with comfort, even if it was unhealthy. After prayer, you disrupt that alignment, and disruption creates tension. Practical shift. Don't measure your prayer by immediate relief. Sometimes the first result of truth is friction. But that friction means something has been awakened, and that leads to the next layer. Resistance often means movement. We assume that if God is with us, things should feel smooth. But Scripture shows something different. In James 1 verses 2-4, it says, "Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance." Not because trials are good in themselves, but because they produce something lasting. Growth rarely feels like peace in the moment. It feels like pressure. You pray for patience, and suddenly, everything tests your patience. You pray for discipline, and distractions increase. You pray for purity, and temptation feels louder. This is not punishment. It's exposure. God isn't adding chaos. He's revealing what was already there, so it can finally change. And there's something worth sitting with in James's word choice. He doesn't say if you face trials. He says whenever. Trials are not a detour from the spiritual life. They are part of it. Scenario. You pray to stop scrolling endlessly. The next day, the urge feels even stronger. Why? Because now you're aware. Before, it controlled you quietly. Now you can see it. And what you can see, you can confront. Practical shift. When resistance rises, don't panic. Ask, what is being revealed right now? That question changes everything. But there's a deeper reason this happens. God works beneath the surface first. We often want external change first. Fix the job. Fix the relationship. Fix the situation. But God often starts internally. In Romans 5 verses 3-4, Paul writes that suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. Notice the order. Not relief first, formation first. And notice where the chain ends. Hope. Not just coping, not just surviving. A settled, deep, unashamed hope. That's what's being built inside you when things feel like they're falling apart on the outside. That means when you pray, God, change my life. You might actually begin with, God, change my heart. And that process can feel uncomfortable because internal change removes illusions. It challenges habits. It exposes motives. It breaks patterns that felt normal but were slowly holding you back. Scenario: you pray for a better relationship. Instead of your partner changing, you start seeing your own reactions clearly. Your defensiveness, your withdrawal. You need to be right. That's not failure. That's alignment. Practical shift. Instead of asking, why isn't this working? Try asking, what is God reshaping in me right now? Because transformation rarely feels like instant peace. It often feels like honest disruption. Spiritual growth feels like loss before it feels like gain. There's a quiet truth in the teachings of Jesus Christ. In Luke 9, verse 23, he says, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me." That word, deny, is important. And so is the word daily. Because following God isn't a one-time decision that makes everything easier afterward. It's a daily re-choosing. Every morning, you return to the same surrender. And some mornings, that feels like loss. You pray for a new direction, but old comforts start fading. You feel less attached to things that once distracted you. That can feel empty at first, like something is missing. But what's really happening is this: God is making space. Space for something deeper, something more stable, something that can actually hold the weight of your life. Scenario: you lose interest in certain habits, but don't yet feel connected to new ones. That in-between stage feels uncomfortable, like you've left one shore but haven't reached the other. But it's necessary. Practical shift. Don't rush to fill the gap. Growth needs space, and that space is where clarity forms. What feels empty may actually be openness. The enemy doesn't react until you move. There's another layer that people avoid talking about. Not everything is just internal. In Ephesians 6, verse 12, Paul writes that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. There is real spiritual resistance. But here's the key. It often becomes noticeable only after you take a step toward God. Before prayer, you are passive. After prayer, you become intentional. And intention creates opposition. This is why the early church described the Christian life not as a garden walk, but as a wrestling match. And you don't feel the weight of a wrestling match until you step onto the mat. Not to destroy you, but to discourage you, to make you believe that the step you just took was a mistake. Scenario: you decide to take your faith seriously. Suddenly, doubt becomes louder. Old sins feel more appealing. People around you seem skeptical. That's not coincidence. That's pressure. Practical shift. Don't interpret increased difficulty as abandonment. Sometimes it's confirmation that you're moving in the right direction. The resistance you feel may be evidence of the threat you've become. But this still leaves a question. What should you actually do when this happens? Let's make this practical. A simple act of obedience. Start small, not dramatic, not overwhelming. Quick win: under 2 minutes. Say this honestly. God, I feel confused, but I'm still here. That's enough. You don't need perfect words. You don't need eloquence. You just need presence. The Psalms are filled with prayers that sound exactly like this. Raw, confused, honest. And God called the people who prayed them people after his own heart. Quick win, under 10 minutes. Read a short passage from the Psalms, like Psalm 23 or Psalm 34. Not to analyze, not to extract 3 points, just to sit with it. Let ground you. Let the words do their quiet work. Shift. Faith grows through consistency, not intensity. And once you start small, you can handle the next moment. The 30-second prayer reset. When everything feels overwhelming, pause. Not later. Right there. Take 1 breath. Then pray. God, give me clarity for this moment, not my whole life. That changes your focus from future anxiety to present guidance. In Matthew 6, verse 34, Jesus reminds us, "Do not worry about tomorrow, because strength is given daily, not all at once, not a year's supply handed over at the start. Daily, the way manna came to Israel in the wilderness, just enough for today." Shift. You don't need to solve everything. Just stay present with God in this moment. Where we misunderstand God. This is where many people quietly drift, not because they stop believing, but because they misunderstand what's happening. Let's clear a few things. If things get worse, I prayed wrong. No, growth often begins with discomfort. Moses prayed right, and things got harder first. God is ignoring me. No, silence can be part of formation. Some of the deepest work God does is quiet and slow. I should feel peace immediately. Not always. Sometimes peace comes after endurance. It's the fruit at the end of the process, not the starting point. Struggle means I'm failing. No, struggle often means you're engaged. A fight only happens when you show up. If I had stronger faith, this wouldn't happen. Even strong faith faces pressure. Paul wrote about spiritual warfare while sitting in a prison cell. I need to fix everything fast. Real change is slow and steady. Quick fixes don't reach the roots. Shift. Faith is not about controlling outcomes. It's about staying aligned, even when outcomes are unclear. A quiet practice that builds faith. You don't need hours. You need consistency. Try this 10-minute daily practice. Sit quietly for 2 minutes. No phone, no noise. Just breathe and arrive. Read 5 to 10 verses from Proverbs or Gospel. Don't rush. Ask one question. What is one thing I can live today? Not 10 things. 1. Sit again for 2 minutes in silence. Let what you read settle. End with a simple prayer. God, guide me in small steps today. That's it. No pressure. No performance. Just rhythm. Because faith doesn't grow in dramatic moments alone. It grows in the small, repeated choices to return, to come back, to show up again. If you remember one thing, things getting worse after you pray does not mean your prayer failed. It often means something has started, something deeper than comfort, something stronger than quick relief, something that, when it's finished, will look like the answer you were actually asking for all along, even if you couldn't have named it at the start. Stay with it. Closing, when it feels like it's not working. There will be moments when it still feels confusing, when progress is invisible, when the silence stretches, when answers feel delayed and the waiting becomes its own kind of wait. But remember this. In Galatians 6 verse 9, it says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." A harvest, not just endurance, not just survival. A harvest if you do not give up, because growth is happening even when you can't see it. The roots go deeper before the branches go higher. Not every change is immediate, but every honest step matters. Thank you for watching Holy Ripple. What is one moment when your life felt harder after you prayed? If this message helped you, like and subscribe for more grounded biblical guidance. And remember, God is still working, even in the tension you don't understand yet.